15th Army's primary objective remained the capture of Sandhurst, but this was still months from completion. The Devils of Devil's Rock were landing 100 kilometers west to seize a biological weapons lab, while the Mantapple Division took the important spaceports of Heathrow and Norfolk. As the 326 approached London, they came under heavy fire from the Burning Tigers, the mercenary unit responsible for the mass slaughter of civilians on Helen. Now at divisional strength, the Mercs were working in tandem with the 17th Maris Lancers. The regular army pushed ahead until they reached Chelmsbury, after which they established observation posts around the city to prevent a breakout before waiting for reinforcements. The Geneva Battle Group was tasked with not just the capture of the Terran hegemony Congress, but also the neighbouring French territories. France was the responsibility of the 5th Army, who landed most of their forces southwest of Paris, with a pair of divisions further southeast of Macron. The Rajor-Pintadas Division led the attack on the capital, which was defended by the 8th Hegemony Patriots. The St. Cyr Military Academy was the site of a lamentable engagement on February 2nd, when a battalion of teenage students loyal to Romanus fought to the bitter end. Versailles was liberated 2 days later. The SLDF continued along the southern edge of the city, and on February 7th secured Orly Spaceport. That same day, the Florida Swamp Foxes crossed the Seine River. The 150th and 197th began launching probes into the city proper, with infantry moving in to secure the 14th and 15th arrondissements in the days after. Meanwhile, the Carver Division was working its way through the southern expanse of the city, beyond the periphery. By the 15th, they had pushed up to Austerlitz Station, securing the Ile-de-Ville city 4 days later. The Patriots had been pushed back into a pocket around the École Militaire, but as the New Orleans Division closed to finish them off, a tactical warhead detonated, almost destroying the Patriots and SLDF alike, along with a large chunk of central Paris. Lyon was relatively bloodless, as the garrison hoped gauntlet Grenoble. There, they held back the superior numbers of the SLDF, who were forced to approach down the narrow valleys. A task force landed to the south of the city, surrounding the defenders, who were destroyed in the early morning hours of February 20th. The battle for the capital would conclude early the next month with the capture of Wassy Spaceport. Nearby, the lead army of the Geneva Battle Group was making their assault on the Terran hegemony capital. Most of the 18th Army had landed just south of the border, while a small task force landed further north along the shores of Lake Geneva. By February 2nd, they had spread out to secure the neighbouring towns. 2 other divisions did the same in France, while the Tobruk Division was leading the main assault force north across the border. The capital was one of the most heavily defended sites on Earth, with the 99th Maris Dragoons, 2nd Tartan Brigade, and 13th Hegemony Patriots standing guard. The Northern Task Force was the first to be engaged at Versoix. By February 7th, the SLDF had pushed the Tartan Brigade back to Geneva Spaceport, but could progress no further on account of the heavily fortified facility. Around this time, the rest of the SLDF reached the southern expanse of the city, while artillery support provided by troops across the border at Jura finally broke the Tartan Brigade's defences, allowing the Flanders Division to take the spaceport for themselves. The Imperial units withdrew back towards the Hegemony Congress, where the Patriots were busy fortifying the complex. By the 12th, the Dragoons had been pushed back across the Arve River. Fighting out of the Old Town, they held the Tobruk Division back until the regular army were able to secure the beachhead on February 19th. Fleeing north back across the Rhone, the Dragoons tried to block this unit by destroying the bridges, but enough remained for the Stallied forces to give chase. With most of the city now secure, the 8 regular army divisions settled down for a long siege. Securing the Mediterranean was essential to cover the southern flank of operations in Europe and prevent the Manus troops based in Africa from heading north. On the Iberian Peninsula, the First Army touched down at Avila. Most units headed towards the capital, but heavy winter snow slowed the infantry considerably. The Hannibal Division forged on ahead though. On February 5th, they entered the city, only to find it totally bereft of Imperial forces. They captured the Royal Palace in short order, and Madrid was declared liberated the next day. Partisans remained, which forced the SLDF to enact martial law for a time, but by the end of the month, they had secured the entire peninsula and crossed over into France. A small detachment was also airlifted across the Mediterranean to secure the Gibraltar Strait. They would be the first to set foot in Africa during Operation Liberation. The second unit in the Southern Europe Battle Group was 6th Army, who landed just north of Naples. The situation in Italy had deteriorated into outright anarchy, perpetuated by General Antilos Lagos' Greenhaven Gestapo. They had spent the past decade ransacking the Italian peninsula, defacing many of the 3,000-year-old monuments. Bandits had de facto control of the region, the strongest of which were recruited into the Gestapo themselves, which had grown to divisional strength. Securing Naples fell to the colony commanders unliking these, a difficult task which they achieved with merit. They finally began to move out on February 27th. With the ground invasion of Earth well underway, Admiral Breck next turned his attention to the secondary targets within the Terran system. First on the list was Vex's moon. After the destruction of the SDS bases by SLR warships, the path was clear for Marines to descend in force on the major population centres. Lunar City housed the largest contingent of Imperial forces, 5,000 all told, but a brief 2-week campaign saw the moon secured by mid-February. Peculiarities of infantry combat in a pressurized environment forced the use of low lethality munitions, which ultimately kept the struggle a largely bloodless affair on both sides. Next were the terraformed terrestrial planets, Mars and Venus. Both large military bases that at one time had formed a war triad alongside Sandhurst. They had been ruined by nuclear strikes during the coup, but there were almost 300 million civilians still living on the worlds. Landings on Mars began on February 9th at Olympus Mons and faced little opposition. The majority of the garrison had been withdrawn to Earth as soon as the SDF had appeared in the system. Now the civilians overthrew the Imperial government and managed to secure by March.
Mars had long been the playground of the ultra-rich. The low gravity allowed for architecture that would have been impossible on Earth, and vanity projects like kilometer-tall statues dotted the dusty landscape. Under the Mars Empire became a major enclave for stuffing supporters among the nobility, with the rest of the current population existing purely to cater to their every whim. In case that is also a new imagined planet full of narcissistic yes men. Ironically, sounds like terror as well, but I digress. Governance of Mars fell to Duke Reginald Windsor Small V, a close political ally and descendant of the old British monarchy. Despite the close ties, Mars was quick to recognize the planet as a lost cause once the Star League Navy appeared in system and extracted whatever forces he could for his own defense. Windsor Small was left hopelessly outgunned and was executed by the planet's underclass in a mass revolt. Mars became a major staging post and hospital site for the SLDF's continuing campaign on Terra, as well as being a jumping-off point for refugees fleeing the carnage.
Venus promised more of a challenge. As part of its terraforming procedures, the Department of Mega Engineering reconstructed an enormous orbital sunshade, the largest man-made object in history. Amaris now hoped to employ this device as a weapon in Operation Ignis, but rushed miscalculations on the part of his officers resulted in the gravitational stresses tearing the sunshade apart. Nobody yet knew it, but through that error, they had resigned Venus to a long, slow fate of environmental collapse, and today the world is all but abandoned. Also left in a dangerous, deteriorating orbit was Aphrodite Station. The sudden arrival of the SLN at proximity point led the 2,000 docked Imperial warships scrambling into action. As they all disengaged from the station at once, the facility began tumbling towards the ground. A 7-hour engagement put an end to the last segment of the Maris naval force, but when the Stallion rushed to save Aphrodite Station, they were targeted by SDS batteries on Venus. The attack soon stopped when Imperial forces on ground stormed their bases and disarmed their colleagues. Their surrender allowed the orbital facility to be saved. Last on the list of targets for the Stallion Navy were new shipyards from which to service their devastated fleet, which now contains many vessels too badly damaged to safely jump to more secure systems to undertake repairs. The swift capture of a handful of independent facilities within the Jovian Trojans went some way to accomplishing their aim. The main goal was the colossal Titan shipyards, the largest commercial complex in existence. Taking it wouldn't be easy, as the station was big to explode if the occupants felt they were about to be overpowered. Instead, a pair of warships, the SLS Ocean and Unity City, jumped to the far side of Saturn, burned off an intercept trajectory with Titan, and then shut down their vessels to mask their approach. After silently slingshotting their way around the gas giant, 6 boarding craft disembarked and made course corrections to bring them up to the shipyard. As they drew closer, the warships powered up, drawing all eyes towards them and creating an opening for the shuttles to land, after which the commandos on board secured the facility in just 15 minutes. The only situation that arose during this time was at the de facto Delta capital, Metis. The massive asteroid had been hollowed out in the early days of space exploration, and more than 50,000 people lived in an enormous 10-kilometer-long revolving habitat. American security forces took the population hostage and threatened to detonate the entire facility. While Starlink negotiators kept on talking, the commando team was able to infiltrate the asteroid through old mining tunnels and eliminate the die-hard American students with only a handful of civilian casualties. 8th Army spent March pushing south through Honju, psychologically preparing themselves for what lay ahead. 20th Army, meanwhile, faced a difficult crossing. For starters, they broke off a pair of divisions to take the Aquarius Archaeology, a massive complex located on the Inland Sea. It took them a whole month to breach the compound, bypass the defensive drones, and secure the naval spaceport. The main battle was happening at Shimonoseki Crossing though. As it happened in the north, the tunnels had been destroyed, and the solitary bridge became a scene of intense fighting. Only when combat engineers reopened one of the tunnels on March 19th were the SLDF infantry able to flank the defenders and secure both sides of the bridge. The last of the chasseurs were destroyed 3 days later. Across the Sea of Japan, 16th Army completed the liberation of the Korean Peninsula and began closing on Beijing. Their approach slowed to withdrawal after running into a pair of AEAF divisions and more than 2 dozen militia regiments. A concentrated effort over 9 days advanced them only 20 kilometers before they had to regroup. Further south, the 16th Hegemony Patriots were chased out of Bangkok on March 2nd and destroyed 10 days later. Off to the northwest, the Mongolian detachment of 2nd Army reached Irkutsk on March 5th. With that, the SLDF then had full control of the Trans-Siberian maglev tracks. The southern detachment was moving through Tibet, liberating Lhasa on the 11th. Their battle group partner, 19th Army, was headed towards Xi'an. When they reached the outskirts of the city on March 19th, they were greeted by large crowds of civilians, but they were soon horrified to discover that many among them were wearing remote explosives. The 201st Maris Lancers fully exploited all 8 million people within Xi'an during their defense of the city. Around 1/3 of the population was killed during the following weeks. The Lancers were finally forced out on April 9th, rounded up 10,000 hostages before departing, which they herded along with them to prevent overhead warships from raining retribution on them. The SLDF was forced to break off pursuit and deal with the humanitarian crisis they had left behind. In India, 9th Army split itself in two. The Bryant Division led a charge against Agra, while the newly appointed Major General Warren Hayes took command of the Ulysses S. Grant Division's assault on New Delhi. On March 10th, the 151st reached Gurgaon and entered into combat with the 29th Maris chasseurs. The engagement was short-lived, the Imperial forces soon withdrawing to the nearby spaceport in an attempt to flee. 2 of the 5 dropships were shot down by aerospace pilots, while the others were tracked to Isfahan, where they became 4th Army's problem. Unfortunately, the capture of the 2 cities did not bring peace, as both Haryana and Uttar Pradesh rose in rebellion against both the Empire and Starlink. The King Henry Division was leading 5 other divisions of 14th Army south through Gujarat, liberating Surat on March 9th and reaching the outskirts of Mumbai 2 days later. The 8th Maris Dragoons held their ground along Vaitana River for a time, before withdrawing back to the side creek. The crossings along the eastern edge of the city were collapsed, forcing the SLDF to attack from the fortified north. The Dragoons managed to hold them there for 5 days before they were again forced to withdraw, this time heading towards the spaceport near Mahim Bay. Unfortunately for them, they never made it, as the city rose up in rebellion around them and executed their oppressors. Soon, most of India was engulfed in a civil war, save only for the northwest districts.
Despite centuries of development and prosperity under the Star League, the age-old imbalance between the haves and have-nots on Earth had never been addressed. It was a problem that had plagued the planet since the days of the Terran Alliance, when humanity was making its first tentative steps into space. Though nation-states had long since been done away with, the fact remained that those first colonies had the closest ties to the administrative districts of Europe and North America. What were most often the richest hegemony worlds continued to funnel wealth back to the countries that established them. For the less affluent regions, neither the Ameris Empire nor Star League had shown any likelihood of resolving the problem. When the Civil War reached their own homes, they saw both Stefan and Alexander as oppressors and took up arms against them. It's unclear whether Kerensky had naively failed to predict the rebellion, or knew all along that there would be trouble, and yet had little option but to press ahead regardless.
4th Army passed through Turkmenistan in early March, then split in 2. The Ricochet Rabbits and Red Diamond Division advanced into Iran, taking Tehran on March 8th, and then dispatched the recently arrived 29th Maris chasseurs 3 days later. They continued west through Baghdad and Damascus, reaching the Mediterranean on April 2nd. The other half raced onwards into Afghanistan, taking Kabul on the 24th. By the end of the month, they had crossed the border again and liberated Islamabad. St. Petersburg was liberated on March 17th, with the last holdouts in northwest Russia falling to 11th Army in following weeks, while another detachment advanced into Poland. To the south, the 17th completed their liberation of Ukraine. Only the Castle Rhine still stood, but with the occupants surrounded and warships overhead, they could decast divisions with new objectives for the following months. Germany was likewise mostly in SLDF hands by the end of March, save for a collection of towns in the east held by the 10th Hegemony Patriots. The 75th Light Horse managed to liberate 3 cities in southern Germany entirely by themselves. The largest obstacle they faced came at an airfield outside Munich, where a pair of experimental super heavy Berth 2s laid waste to the Light Horse until they ran out of ammo. Across the channel, orbital bombardments of the Santos Castle Rhine by SLS Wellesley had rendered the facility largely inoperable. On March 11th, the Special Forces team infiltrated the complex through narrow wiring conduits, allowing 15th Army to take control of the outermost level of the complex, with 3 further rings of defences still to go. The assault on London remained on hold until the situation at Santos was resolved, but the Calais detachment took out and then set up positions in the east of the city at Queen Elizabeth II Park. The Manteuffel Division likewise reinforced their position at Ealing Pond. Throughout March, 5th Army completed the liberation of France, but it was a campaign that cost them dearly. A full third of the units would be listed as casualties, which was quickly around. The Iberian Peninsula was similarly pacified, but with little actual fighting. It was suspected that the Imperial unit defending the region had never left, but simply abandoned their posts and fled as small groups into the countryside. In early March, 6th Army was making swift northward progress, and they came under fire from chemical weapons launched from the Ferentino Hills. The effects were devastating, and the Star League Navy quickly sought retribution. The Greenhaven Gestapo withdrew into the capital, taking up positions within hospitals and schools to dissuade further use of orbital weapons. Precision strikes were still made when possible. On March 9th, the SLDF reached the city outskirts, taking the spaceport to prevent the mercs from escaping.